think we have to put an emphasis, aside from restoring not the balance of power, but the proper alignment of power, the vast majority of which belongs in the legislature, we have to put an emphasis on where war powers in particular belong, and stop this universal agreement among those who support the wars and those who oppose the wars that the war decisions belong to the president, and the president is to be credited or blamed for his war making. This is incredibly dangerous. The war powers belong in the Congress, and the House of Representatives alone can end any war by ceasing to fund it. And the Senate and the President can do whatever they please, but they cannot fight wars if the House of Representatives stops funding them. And there are bills from the more progressive members in Congress saying, we don't want to fund an escalation, even though they just did it. And when they bring up another funding bill in the spring, we will all be told it's too late, the escalation's already happened, we have to now fund it. And there are bills to say, we want an exit plan, any exit plan. It can be, you know, move everybody to Taiwan in 85 years, it's just an exit plan, whatever. There are nice bills. There's a bill to say, let's have a war tax to pay for the wars. And there's not much taking of 10 seconds to stop and think that if the House passes one of these bills, it has to be passed by the Senate and signed by the President, when the House could simply stop funding the wars. So I would encourage you to take a look at a website called defundwar.org, which charts where every Congress member stands on voting for more money for these wars. And to take a look at peaceoftheaction.org, where peace is spelled P-E-A-C-E, peaceoftheaction.org, which is organizing people to come to Washington, D.C. in March and do what any civilized nation would have done years ago and nonviolently shut the place down. And I would encourage you, whether or not you can come to Washington, D.C., to lobby your Congress members in the House locally without placing top priority on politeness. That is to say, they are killing people, and they need to be gone after in the media. Their working days and those of their staff need to be disrupted. You need to go and sit in their offices and not leave until they agree to leave Afghanistan and Pakistan and Iraq. If they have not yet passed this godforsaken corporate bailout of a health care bill, you need to cough a lot while you're sitting there in their office. We need to take this seriously and to behave as people behave in a representative republic following an election. We've behaved for a year as if we'd had a coup. And we were in the habit of having coups. We'd had 2 coups, but then we had an election. And people behaved as if we'd had a coup. We have to start, as many of you I know in this room have known for years, but we have to start putting activism after elections, not before it. I've been reading a book. I read most of it on the flight out here from the East Coast that I recommend everybody buy after they buy my book, called Europe's Promise, by a guy named Stephen Hill. And Europe is the same species of creature we are. They're Homo sapiens over there in Europe, right? And we're told that they've got everything wrong and their economy can't succeed and they're overtaxed and they're suffering under the evils of taxation and so forth. Never mind that they are bigger than us with a bigger economy and a stronger economy than ours. They pay more taxes and they get paid more money, and they take home as much money as we do, and they get things for their taxes, right? They get paid vacations, they get paid paternal leave and maternal leave, they get paid pensions, they get paid free preschool through college. People in this country tend to have to pay for college on top of their wonderfully low taxes, which, by the way, when you add in the state and local and property taxes and all of the fees and so forth, not to mention college and everything else, you pay as much in taxes as the poor, suffering, overtaxed Europeans. And these are people, if you've read Harvey Wasserman's book, Ecotopia, on a future salvation of the planet through environmental, sustainable innovations, you know, it's there, it's happening. These are people who have health care. We don't have to invent it, right? But what's interesting is the foreign policy of the European Union, which is carrots, and ours is only sticks, big, stupid sticks. They hold out to a country like Turkey the opportunity to join the European Union. And they spread democracy. They don't just talk about spreading democracy, they actually are spreading democracy. We pay a lot more money to do it. We bomb countries. And we spread nothing but hatred and resentment. So I encourage people to consider Europe's promise. And I encourage people to think about what we can do nationally, but also at the state and local levels. And I would love to start reading books about Oregon's promise. You know, there are measures 66 and 67 that need to be voted yes on to have a little bit of progressive taxation in Oregon, and then you need to brag about it and tell the country, we just voted to raise taxes. That will be the biggest glaring headline anywhere. And why you did it. You have fusion voting here. Use that as an example to the other states. I also wanted to mention on measures 66 and 67, I got an email forwarded to me today from Steve Novick, who I recall as brave enough to advocate impeaching Cheney and Bush when he was running for office. These are the kind of people who need to be encouraged. I understand you have clean elections in this town. Other people need to hear about that and what difference it makes, and you need to have them in this state. But you can bring the National Guard home to Oregon. You can fund peace efforts. You can have a state Department of Peace, which we're not going to get for decades at the national level. You can sign international treaties as cities and states. You can create state single-payer health care. You can protect the environment in this state. And you can provide real family values like they have in Europe and we just dream about here at the state level. And we can start reading about Oregon's promise. And you know, the difference is not just philosophy and background between Europe and here, and the difference is not some variation in genetics. The difference is that they don't put all of their money into the military. That's the difference. And people tell me, well, we need a draft. If we had a draft, everything would be different. And it's true, everything would be different. I don't know that we can get one, or that if we could get one, we couldn't just stop the funding of the wars. But the fact is that the hardships that everyone is facing right now in this country, incredible hardships, are the direct result of all of the money going to the wars and the military. So we could get a draft and people would understand that, or we can persuade people to understand the current situation that we're actually in. And so I would advocate attempting that. But it's wonderful to be here, and I would love to take any questions that any of you might have.